and welcome to today's Fish for Thought. My name is Anis Khalid from WorldFish, and I am your host for today. So, Fish for Thought, or F4T for short, is a knowledge sharing series established by WorldFish. And this edition also marks the beginning of the Asia Africa BlueTech Superhighway project, also known as AABS's Knowledge Sharing Series, for sharing, learning, and exchanging implementation knowledge on aquatic food systems research and innovation, South-South collaboration, and more. And with this, we have extended an invitation to welcome you, AABS's funders from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office of the UK government, or more commonly known as FCDO, our implementing partners from the countries AABS works in, and those who have followed the journey since the beginning. So welcome, and do join the conversations happening in the chat box. Share who you are, where you're from, and how we have collaborated before. To those listening to this audio only, thanks for joining us podcast style. Happy to innovate with you on all forms of content. So before we begin, a bit of housekeeping rules to all audience members. Please keep your cameras and microphones switched off to avoid disrupting the speakers today. However, keep the conversation rolling in the chat, and you'll have a chance to voice your questions or commentaries during the Q&A at the very end. Now let's begin. I'm excited to introduce today's topic because it's a first of the very many, scaling inclusive and resilient aquatic food market systems. And while I buy some time for our speakers to get ready to share their screens with their slides, I will introduce them to you one by one. But you can already see them on the screen, who they are and what they will be presenting today. We will start this oceanic voyage of knowledge sharing with none other than Mariska Bottema, WorldFish's senior scientist and inclusive aquatic food market systems science team lead, followed by Dennis Onkangi, founder and CEO of Kuza Freezers, who will then take us on a deep dive into innovations in cold chain solutions for small-scale fisheries. And our third and final speaker of the day, AABS's project manager based in Bangladesh, Ashoke Kumar, who has kindly stepped in for our original third speaker, Abdul Batin, to speak on advancing integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, IMTA practices. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen, and Mariska, over to you.
All right, so hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're watching this. My name is Mariska Bottema, and I lead the inclusive markets work here at WorldFish. And today I'm going to take you on a little journey, starting with how we conceptualize inclusive aquatic food market systems, and then moving into some very concrete examples of inclusive market interventions from our AABS program. So we'll start with the big picture, why these markets matter, the barriers they face, and the challenges in scaling inclusivity. And then we'll bring it down to real-world interventions. So first, what are inclusive market systems? So when we talk about inclusive market systems, are we talking about value chains? Are we talking about end markets? The answer is both, plus more. This also explains why WorldFish's market systems team is more than 30 staff across all of our country offices. So when we say market system, what we mean is more than just buyers and sellers. It's the whole network that gets a product from where it's made to the person who uses it. It's made up of three components. There's the core value chain, so the actual flow of goods, money, and services between producers, processors, traders, and consumers. Around that are supporting functions like finance, inputs, transport, and information services. And these are essential for the core value chain to work, to function. And all of this is shaped by rules and norms. So this goes from formal laws to standards to informal customs, for example. And these determine who can participate and how benefits are shared in inclusive market systems. So in aquatic foods, this could mean everything from landing site regulations to how women fish processors access credit to export quality standards for shrimp, for example. So we know what market systems are. What are inclusive market systems? Well, inclusive market system is one in which all actors, including women, youth, and people that have been marginalized, are active participants in these market systems and no longer just have a role as passive consumers. So rather, they become active participants. So an inclusive market system takes the basic idea of a market system and adds two critical goals, being fairness and participation. So it's about making sure that all actors not only have access to markets, but also get a fair share of the benefits coming from these markets. It's also about having a voice, about influencing the rules, the norms, and the governance of the market system. Now, what I find is a lot of the literature on inclusive markets really focuses on social and economic inclusion and making sure that everyone has a voice. But I always say it's also about making sure that the environment or nature has a voice, because sustainability is a key component of inclusive markets. So ensuring economic gains don't come at the cost of degrading the natural resources that our food systems depend on. So in our work, inclusion is not an add-on. It's actually built into the design of how the market functions. Inclusive markets are an example of how both social and environmental considerations transform the processes of production and consumption. And we can't just insert marginalized actors into existing value chains to do this. We actually need to reshape how the market system functions. So why does all of this matter for aquatic food systems? I'm going to say a couple of things which all of you probably already have heard 100 times, but aquatic food systems are, of course, critical for livelihoods, for nutrition and trade. The sector employs over 62 million people in primary production alone, and women play a huge role, a central role in, particularly in processing. And aquatic foods serve diverse markets. So from local to global markets, from high value commodity markets to providing vital nutrition for vulnerable people. So what this means is the aquatic food sector caters to both high value and subsistence segments. So many different segments. And to make things more complicated, aquatic food reach these markets through complex value chains that are socially, economically, and environmentally embedded in the places where they take place. Now, though aquatic food production has steadily increased in recent years and has contributed to economic growth, the equitable distribution, growth, or sharing of benefits coming from these markets has been contested. We know that ending poverty requires economic growth, but in many cases, growth can actually bypass women, youth, smallholders, other groups that have been marginalized, thereby replicating inequalities. This leads to a strong call for the need for inclusive market systems development or inclusive market systems transformation. So in aquatic food systems, that means addressing things like power dynamics in the value chain and trade, ensuring that smallholders can access resources and services, protecting ecosystems so production is viable long term. But we know that this vision doesn't just happen by itself. There are significant barriers that make it really difficult. So what are these barriers? There's three. First of all, we have access barriers. So smallholders and women, for example, might lack access to quality and affordable inputs, or finance, or technical services, or end markets, people to sell to, buyers. And there's also systems barriers. So examples of systems barriers is poor infrastructure, weak coordination or relations between value chain actors, high individual risks, of a farm or a fisher, which make participation in value chain difficult. And finally, we have structural barriers. Examples of this are in transgender inequalities and unequal land distribution, for example, which really require deeper social change to overcome. And an inclusive market approach really has to address all of these dimensions because they're often intertwined, which makes it quite a difficult task. Because of these different barriers, interventions and innovations are needed at multiple levels. So at the producer level, we might improve production through technical innovations, or training, or better access to inputs and services. You see an example in the picture, which is a drying rack, which is an example of a technical innovation that a fish processor might use to reduce loss and waste. At the market system level, we focus on relationships. So building trust and cooperation between producers, between traders, between processors, buyers, and strengthening the local private sector so it can provide goods and services widely to the people who need them. Finally, at the institutional level, we work on the enabling environment. Examples are gender-inclusive policies, financing mechanisms, and standards that support sustainable and fair markets. So the real impact comes when we connect these different levels so that the changes reinforce each other and actually lead to systems change. Now, one of the biggest challenges in the development of inclusive market systems is scale. So many inclusive market models may work in small pilots, but struggle to expand without losing what really makes them inclusive. The literature on scaling warns us about what they call the pilot to scale gap, where models work well in small, well-supported settings, but they struggle when resources and oversight are reduced, which is what happens when you scale. Not always, but often. And decentralized governance, which is often something aspired in inclusive market development, can empower local decision-making, and that's a good thing. But what we've seen, it also makes coordination harder when systems grow. Then we have the concept of institutional stickiness. So that's where entrenched norms and power structures resist change. So these norms and power structures can actually pull the system back to business as usual, even after promising pilots have happened. Now, without safeguards, scaling can actually replicate existing inequalities. For example, if more powerful actors capture the benefits of scaling and don't distribute these benefits across the different actors in the value chain. So I think the conclusion is that scaling needs to be intentional and with equity built into the design from the start. So we have to be thinking about equity from the beginning of designing these types of systems. We need scaling strategies that are not just about replication, but really about embedding new norms and practices. Research tells us that scaling isn't a straight line from small to big, as on the slide before, that was a straight line. It's actually a reiterative process of implementing, of learning, of adapting, and then expanding. And this is why we talk about reflexivity in the type of work that we do on market systems. So that's the ability to reflect on what's working and what's not working and adapt the model to different contexts. So for us, that means building feedback loops into market interventions so they can evolve rather than just be replicated. So we need to treat scaling in market systems development as a reflexive process, meaning we act, we learn, we adapt, and then we act again. And embedding these feedback loops means regularly checking in. Are we still inclusive? Are the benefits still being equitably distributed across different actors that are involved in these market systems? And lastly, are environmental safeguards still holding up as we move to increasing the scale of the work that we're doing? So market systems transformation interventions are applied through the whole aquatic food system. So I wanted to illustrate just a couple of examples of where we work to show you the sort of breadth of of market systems interventions in aquatic food systems. So this is a little diagram of aquatic food systems. In the middle, you have the core value chain. The top, you have supporting services, logistics, finance, etc. At the bottom, you have the institutional environment, laws and regulations, standards. On the left, you have drivers of change in aquatic food systems. And on the right, you have the impacts, so what we're working towards. So let's start at the left. An example of, we have foresight modeling. So we do modeling to understand what kind of impact, how different drivers like markets and consumption, for example, how they affect the entire food system. We also have a lot of work looking at how we can increase access to finance for example, women, for young people, for smallholders, for different types of actors that have difficulty in accessing finance rather. Then if we look at the bottom, at the institutional environment, we can think about how we should develop assurance models that are accessible to small producers. We know that a lot of certification standards are not accessible to small producers. So how can we develop assurance models that are? Then we have a lot of work on how we can increase fishers and aquaculture farmers' access to commercial markets, and also how we can increase their access to institutional markets like school feeding programs. And in doing so, how do we make sure that nutrition reaches those consumers that need it most? We also focus on looking at how we can increase aquaculture farmers' access to quality inputs such as feed and seed, which is what they need in order to produce. We also look at increasing fish handling and processing capacities of fishers and farmers in order to increase their income and lower loss and waste. We also look at how to develop nature-positive aquaculture production models, so all of these within the farm or within the fishing vessel, fishing unit. And this box covers the whole value chain because we look a lot at how we can increase the capacity of SMEs across the whole value chain to help them reduce costs and lower their impact on the environment. And as you can see, the whole food system is actually covered, demonstrating the enormous coverage of the type of work involved with inclusive market systems or market systems transformation. And to top it off, if we do our job right, the work has a direct impact on improved food security and nutrition, on social and economic inclusion, and of course on environmental sustainability. So now I'm going to focus a little bit on AABS before we hear from our presenters about some of the work that we're doing in the field. Most of you have probably already heard about AABS, but if not, AABS stands for Asia Africa BlueTech Superhighway. It harnesses South-South collaboration to assess, adapt, and scale evidence-based innovations and models for delivering nature-positive impact through aquatic food systems. So it's implemented by WorldFish in collaboration with a whole bunch of partners. And in doing so, AABS aims to transform the livelihoods of coastal communities and help restore marine and coastal ecosystems. And our work is based in Bangladesh, Kenya, Mozambique, Nigeria, and Tanzania. Now, AABS aims to deliver a triple win for nature, people, and climate. We're working on food and nutrition security, increased employment opportunities, and income opportunities, and on the sustainable management of marine and coastal resources in order to adapt to climate change. So AABS has 4 areas of work. The first, focusing on digital transformation. So working on how to use digital tools to improve small-scale fisheries management. The second area is focused on integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. So the development of sustainable aquaculture models and understanding how these models can be scaled. Then we have the third area of work, which is really focused on reducing food loss and waste through the testing and scaling of climate-smart innovations in both the fisheries supply chain and the aquaculture supply chain. And then last but not least, we have our area of work on incentive-based approaches, where we look at how incentive-based approaches can enable the effective, equitable, and sustainable management of marine and coastal resources. All of these areas of work include work on market systems transformation. I'm going to take you through that quite briefly now. Again, I have this picture of the aquatic food systems, and I'm going to explain where these 4 different projects within AABS, where our markets work in these projects falls within the food system. So if you look at our digital coasts work, what we want to do there is, we have a model that's We have tools that are collecting data from small-scale fisheries, from small-scale fishers. And what we want to figure out is how can we use the data that's being collected to actually increase fishers' access to buyers and empower them to increase their negotiation power with buyers. So that's the main focus of our markets work in the Digital Coasts project. So increasing linkages to buyers for these fishers. Then when it comes to our work on integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, we're developing these models of production for IMTA, which is very, very important. But equally important, we need to look at the enabling conditions for production. On one side, we have the need for quality inputs. So farmers need quality feed in order to produce these IMTA-produced aquatic food products. Where are they going to get the seed from? So working on increasing linkages to input suppliers is a big, big part of the IMTA project. And then if you look at the other side of the value chain, it's about linking these producers with potential buyers, because who's going to buy the seaweed that they're producing? Who's going to buy the bivalves that they're producing if there aren't markets for these products yet? So that's a big part of the IMTA work on markets that we're doing, which we're going to hear a lot about later from Ashoke. And then we have our work on food loss and waste. So in this area of work, we're testing climate smart innovations for cold storage, for drying, for blanching, for cooking. So different places along the value chain, we're looking at innovations, how we can reduce the loss and waste occurring there. So that really goes from harvest to processing to storage to distribution. And then finally, in our work on incentive-based approaches, we're really covering two of these areas. Firstly, we're looking at strengthening the institutional, legal, and policy frameworks for incentive-based approaches to coastal conservation and fisheries management. So what type of legal frameworks are needed to enable these types of interventions? So that's one part of the work. And then the other part of the work is, of course, how can these types of incentive-based approaches be financed? Where's the money coming from? So yeah, as you can see, all of the AABS areas of work are working on markets in some way or another. And in the rest of this presentation, we're going to hear from Dennis on food loss and waste innovations in cold storage. And then we're going to hear from Ashoke about the different challenges associated with the supply of quality inputs and finding output markets for IMTA. So it is with great pleasure that I hand over to the two presenters in the rest of this presentation, Dennis from Kuza Freezer and Ashoke from our Bangladesh team. Over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Mariska, for that great presentation. My name is Dennis Onkangi. I am the CEO and founder of Kuza Freezer. Kuza Freezer is a Swahili word which is a combination of two words. Kuza means empowerment, and freezer basically supporting people with access to cold storage. So our business is based in Kenya, and we've been supporting small-scale fisher folks in accessing, in curbing post-harvest fish losses through access to affordable cold storage. And for the last 5 years since inception, we have been interacting with these small-scale fisher folks. And the main problem that we saw firsthand was the issue of post-harvest fish losses among the small-scale fisher folks, especially those in off-grid fishing communities. And the losses were going as high as 45% on a daily basis. Most of these fisher folks not only come from low-income communities, but also are from off-grid settlements, which makes it very hard for them to access reliable cold storage solutions. Most of them depend on ice, which sometimes is not really reliable in the long run. So as a company, we've been ideating and coming up with solutions to be able to bridge the cold chain gap, especially for small-scale fisher folks. And the two solutions we've been offering for the last 5 years, we've been offering pay-as-you-go solar-powered freezers in the range between 100 and 150 liters of capacities. And also, apart from just the cold storage, there is the issue of how these remote offered fisher folks the issues of how they access markets. You find that most of these communities may need to walk about 10 to 15 kilometers to access better markets. And if you try to figure out these kind of distances, it really affects the quality of fish if they really don't have a sustainable cold storage solution. So we introduced the last mile solution, which is an electric motorbike, which is fitted with a portable freezer. And this solution helps these fisher folks in distributing or delivering their fish to high-end markets while still maintaining fish quality. What has been able to make our solution or our pay-as-you-go services possible is because of the pay-as-you-go technology that we built, which is a hardware that is integrated in our solar-powered freezers. And this hardware helps us to be able to remotely control these products, especially when maybe the farmers or the fisher folks default payments. And with this kind of hardware, it has really made it very easy for the fisher folks to afford these solutions by paying either on a daily or monthly basis to be able to own these products. So this hardware is controlling these freezers with just an SMS. It has a SIM card installed in it, and with just a simple SMS notification, we could easily turn on and off the cold storage equipment that we give the small-scale fishers. The challenges that we have been is affecting people around the cold storage sector is that there is the technical aspect whereby people, most of the small-scale fisher folks, are in off-grid settlement, and they fully rely on ice to preserve their fish harvest, which is really not reliable in the long run. On the social aspect, you find that there is still a huge knowledge gap among the small-scale fisher folks. Even with access to cold storage, without proper knowledge on fish handling techniques, you find that sometimes the fish quality is affected and they end up losing market. On the economical aspect, most of the cold storage equipments are quite costly, which makes it very hard for low-income fisher folks in accessing these solutions. And that's why without the PAYGO's interventions, it makes it very hard for them to be able to access these services. For the fishermen, it is very hard because of the seasonality element of fish availability. And sometimes it really affects them, especially when they really don't have enough to be able to even sustain themselves. On the environmental aspect, still, there is huge post-harvest fish losses, which the communities are facing, which, as I said, is going as high as 45%. Our company was privileged to also participate in the AABS project, where we were able to test our PAYGO solutions. We had 2 sites where we implemented 12 solar-powered cold storage solutions. The first site was Umoja Self-Help Group, which is a women-led community fish farming project found in Kilifi County. And with our 4 solar-powered freezers, these communities have been able to reduce post-harvest fish losses because they really had a huge challenge in cold storage. The second site was Mtwapa Beach Management Units, or Mtwapa BMU, where we delivered 8 solar-powered freezers to the small-scale fishermen in that beach management unit. So there are challenges that we've been facing since inception, and also still even during the implementation of these PAYGO models. And one of the building on not only fish handling, but also how do we support these fisher folks to access better markets. For the case of the Umoja Self-Help Group, which is a group of people doing fish farming, they also explained to us that they have about 3 to 4 month gap between the harvest cycles. And with a PAYGO model, it's really very difficult for them to be able to have consistent payments, especially on the PAYGO, which really leads to a lot of payment defaults. But it is something that we are still having discussions around how do they be able to maximize on the cold storage solution, even within the cycles where they don't have proper harvest. The other issue the communities have been raising was the issue of low access to inputs, especially on fingerlings, to be able to scale their fish production and improve their income, and also at the end of the day, be able to achieve repayment ability. For the small-scale fishermen, the issue they raised was the issue of seasonality, especially the proper BMU, where they say that sometimes, even during low catch seasons, you find that the small-scale fishermen find it very difficult to even sustain themselves with the little catch they have. And at the end of the day, it really affects the pay-go, because sometimes they need to pay either on a daily or even monthly basis. And without, during low seasons, it really makes it very hard for them to be able to achieve this. So as a company, we are still coming up with solutions to be able to see how do we, even as much as the communities are having access to solar-powered freezers, we have seen a huge problem in them accessing better markets. And even the issue with the rising issue of quality control processes, we've been able to launch our first solar-powered or hybrid cold storage hubs, which are going to act as a go-to market for the small-scale fisher folks and fish farmers. So in these hubs, what we're looking to do is that we will be working closely with these fisher folks, source fish from them, of course, by first of all, working with them to ensure that the quality control process is guaranteed. Then once we source fish from them, we are able to aggregate them in our cold storage hubs, after which now we are able to distribute to restaurants, hotels, and even fish vendors who are looking for quality fish. So our impact so far since inception is that we've been able to distribute 450 plus solar-powered cold storage solutions, with 60% of these cold storage solutions going to small-scale fisher folks, and 40% going to other vendors. And through the AABS project, we've been able to empower a lot of women in, especially those who are doing mariculture and also fish farming. And 70% of these communities are actually women-led businesses. And we've really seen the impact going a long way in not only supporting these fisher communities in curbing post-harvest fish losses, but also improving their income through market linkages. Our last mile solution, we've been able to also increase our last mile solution to 35 units. We have been able to create jobs for riders, people who are helping the fisher folks in distributing fish to markets. But also, we have helped them improve their income, because now they are able to access better markets. Thank you so much for that, and I'll be happy to maybe chip in with any question.
Thank you very much, Dennis. So let's move on to our third and final speaker, Ashoke. Over to you to share your screen.
Okay, good afternoon to all. I am Ashoke Sarker, AABS, Bangladesh. Just now I am presenting the AABS market works in Bangladesh based on our planned works. Just very practical one, based on our allocated resources, times, and others. So, first of all, you know the introduction of IMTA piloting in Bangladesh in 2025. You know here, the two universities, we have two partners of two universities. Those conducted 4 IMTA trials in Bangladesh with the AABS. Then, based on that, we designed 7 models of different species combinations. And then we identified some key challenges of IMTA, input, supply, and output markets. And we planned steps undertaken to address and mitigate the challenges. Okay. As you know, the main feature of IMTA, actually IMTA is an aquaculture method that uses fed fish species to produce nutrients supporting lower trophic species such as bivalves, seaweed, and other aquatic vegetables, and bottom-dwelling extractive invertebrates. This trophic change benefits both the species and the environment by providing valuable ecosystem service. Those combined species from different trophic levels to recycle nutrients and reduces negative environmental impacts. This year, activities in Bangladesh. We established 19 pilot demonstrations, 16 pond-based and 3 marine-based IMTA in 17 communities with 96 fellow farmers. Those are taking the training through Farmers Field School approach. We designed 7 models with different species combination. Pond-based IMTA design, we designed 4 models. Model 1 includes corn, G3 rohu, buffalo spinach, water spinach, freshwater mussel, and apple snap. Model 2 includes shrimp, Zona Tangra means Maestas Gulio, Pasche, Liza Pasche, and the Najas indica and snail. Model 3 includes shrimp, Pasche, Nona Tangra, seaweed, and green mussel, and or oyster. Sivas, model 4 includes Sivas, seaweed, and green mussel and oyster. Marine based, we have 3 design. Model 5 includes hatchery produced Sivas. Only one hatchery produced Sivas seed in Bangladesh with very limited scale because the lack of very technical expertise in breeding the Asian Sivas, but they are struggling mainly the brood management and fry nursing. So we will collect the fry from seed from the hatchery, and model 5 designed based on that. Hatchery produced Sivas fry, seaweed, and green mussel and oyster. Model 6 includes wild Sivas. As you know, the marine and coastal aquaculture mainly dependent on the wild source of seed. So that we designed one with wild Sivas, seaweed, green mussel, and oyster. And model 7 for marine based, Pasche, seaweed, green mussel, and oyster. So this is the fed species for IMTA. This is the Asian Sivas, Maestas Gulio means Nona Tangra in Bangla, and Liza Pasche in the local name is Pasche. This is the G3 rohu, and the Pineus monodon, the brackish water water shrimp, and the low salinity to freshwater corn. And this is the inorganic extractive we are using, the seaweed, ulba, and glaciaria, and in case in the pond system, we are using the water spinach and Najas indica and buffalo spinach. And organic extractive species for mollusk of bivalves for IMTA. This is the green mussel, oyster, and the telescopium. This is the brackish water mollusk, and this the apple snail, and the freshwater to low salinity mussels. This is our, all are in our design. We identified the challenges in Bangladesh with the IMTA inputs and output markets. Now I am talking about input markets, mainly seed of marine and coastal finfish species, extractive species, mainly dependent on wild source. Feed is still scarce because feed companies don't produce feed for coastal and marine finfish, but they produce corn and shrimp feed. Bangladesh lack marine finfish hatcheries. For marine finfish hatcheries, only 2 hatcheries in Bangladesh, those who are involved in producing the seed of Asian sea bass in very limited scales, and as well as the Nuna Tengra, Maestas Gulio, which poses a significant hurdle to the spread adoption of IMTA. At present, finfish mussels and seaweed of IMTA are dependent on wild source mainly. And the lack of investment in promoting marine aquaculture in Bangladesh and limited technical expertise in marine finfish, bivalves and seaweed breeding, farming and marketing. And output markets, marine and coastal species ready and structured market for finfish, shrimp, prawn and aquatic vegetables, but almost no market of seaweed and bivalves, mainly green mussel and oyster. What is the main component of the IMTA? Food safety issue of bivalves is the main issue, one of the issues, very concerned issues. No depuration protocol developed yet. Lack of certification for food safety issues for bivalve and seaweed. No value-added products for seaweed and bivalves. Very limited market access and demand for IMTA products like seaweed. Only ethnic people collect the seaweed and green mussels from the wild and they consume it. They are habituated to consume. But the mainstream people are not taking this. And plans and steps to mitigate the challenge. Our plan to be developed a depuration protocol that ensures bivalves are safe and clean for consumption, engaging BFRI. You know, BFRI, Bangladesh Fisheries Research Institute, only one aquatic research institute, government institute in Bangladesh. We are trying to get partner. And Sivashu, Chattogram Veterinary and Animal Science University is our partner. AABS or WorldFish partner and WorldFish are together are working to develop supplementary feed for Nona Tengra and sea bass, Maestas Gulio and Asian sea bass. Already working on that. Already they established the laboratory setup and developed protocol, and accordingly they are doing this. To be developed standard nursing technique for a hatchery produced sea bass, price engaging sea bass hatchery, mainly green hatchery only in Bangladesh. Only one green in year. Sea bass hatchery in Bangladesh, they are producing very limited number of seed. To be developed seaweed and bivalve through online platform and promotional meeting with the big consumer like restaurants, main in domestic level, engaging private sector. we have a plan to engage one private sector who will promote seaweed and bivalves. It depends on the certification after taking the certification. Nutrition, already we started this awareness session, nutritional benefit of seaweed awareness among the 400 women in the 20 coastal communities. Okay, mainly cooking demonstration with the different recipes of seaweed. And the next step, finally, we will go for certification process for bivalves and seaweed with Bangladesh Standard Testing Institution, who is the only one authorized organization to give the certification, so the certificate of the value-added products. And Department of Fisheries stopped after depuration of protocol finalizations. When BFRI completed the research on depuration protocol, then we will go for certification with these results. As you know, BSTI and DOP is the government organizations, and BFRI also a government organizations. Government is when government research organizations will develop the protocol, then they will pursue for certification to with BSTI and Department of Fisheries. This is the very short presentations. If you have any questions, I am happy to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ashok. And also to Mariska and Dennis, that was incredibly rich and insightful. And from a science communicator perspective, like myself, I was personally interested in the so what of aquatic food market systems and how it plays out in the overall market food systems transformation. So, and you can see that the real life examples from Dennis and Ashok from Asia and Africa also piqued the interest of our audience members. You can see in the chat there's been, many questions that have been asked. So now if I can ask Ashok to discontinue sharing your screen, and then I would like to invite Mariska and Dennis to also join in. We have just a few minutes until we have to end the session, but I would like to, address some of the questions from our audience members, if that's okay. So we have the first question from Mike Acester. Hi, Mike. This is a question for Mariska, actually. Thanks for the interesting presentation. Very clear. His question is, inclusive market systems depend on predictable rules, functioning institutions, and security. That was clear in the presentation. If these preconditions don't exist, how can we help to avoid the market system from becoming exploitative, fragmented, and controlled by elites or informal actors? Mariska, that question is for you.
Thanks for your question. Yeah, you ask a very, very critical and good question. I think that our job is to understand these power dynamics in these market systems. So we need to understand where these sort of structural issues are. And depending on what these issues are, we need to sort of co-design approaches to address them with people that are involved in these market systems themselves. And I think, you mentioned exploitative, fragmented, controlled by elites. There's two different sort of audiences that we're working with, right? We're working with governments, which might have a lot of these structural barriers within their legislation or within their governance approaches. And then we also have the private sector. We have companies. And I think the approach differs when working with these two different, I'm going to call them audiences. I don't know if that's the right word. But I think, I could go on about this for ages, but I think in summary, we need to understand what the problems are. We need to hear from the people within these market systems what are the barriers that they're facing, and then co-design solutions with them. I think that's our responsibility.
Thank you. Very clear.
Also, Mike has another question for Dennis, actually. Dennis, do the freezer units come with a warranty? And if so, can the users extend this beyond the initial period? I'm wondering about the maintenance costs and whether these are affordable.
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. Yes, we give up to 3 years warranty period for our solar freezers. And of course, our solar freezers are designed to be low maintenance, and maybe it can be done within 2 to about 3 years. So it's quite cost effective. And with the 3-year warranty period, we are able to work along with the small scale fishers, ensuring that they get the best of the service.
Yeah, and if people didn't get that, Dennis also answered in writing in the chat. And of course, this conversation can be continued as well. So Dennis, if you can stay, we have another question from Wanjiku. She said, congratulations, an interesting model to address loss and waste. I would agree. So her question is, who is buying the frozen fish, to which markets is this sold? You mentioned accessing hotels. So this is a technology more for the high-end species, not daga or omena, for example. And she followed up with another question. What's the price of fresh versus frozen fish? I am particularly thinking of low-income consumers. Does the price increase in a way that these fish, become inaccessible to low-income households?
Great. Those are also interesting questions. What I can say is that at some point, you see, we are really advocating so much that the fisher folks don't stay with the fish for a longer period, because the more they stay with the fish, the quality still of the fish at some point reduces, and they might not be able to attract better pay. But in circumstances whereby the market is not really available, of course, the fish will have to go through the frozen state. We have a lot of fish vendors, small-scale fish vendors, who are always looking for this kind of fish to buy, process, and cook for the communities. And this has actually been the majority of the target market for a lot of the farmers we've worked with. For our cold storage hubs that we have set, most restaurants are really interested in fresh fish mostly. But what we're doing here is that we want to work closely with these fisher folks, so that the moment they get their fish, their freezers will act as the initial phase of quality control, so that they really don't have to go to frozen state, but we are able to buy them while they're still in good quality, then take them to our cold room, so we're able to regulate or control the temperatures and ensure that they're able to reach the markets while still fresh. So this is the kind of campaign we are doing to make sure that the fisher folks don't stay with the fish for longer. So if you compare the price of frozen fish versus fresh fish, of course, frozen fish will attract less pay, but the market is quite huge if you try to compare the target market. For the small-scale fisher folks, their target market is always the small-scale fish vendors, who really don't worry so much about either the fish is frozen or fresh. But for high-end restaurants, their key concern is about the freshness. Can the fish be put in ice condition instead of being frozen? So we're really trying to see how we can merge these two things together with additional training to the small-scale fisher folks as they leverage on our technologies.
Thanks, Dennis. You mentioned about buyers as well. And I wanted to also invite Ashoke back into the room. We have a question here when he touched something in his presentation. Ashoke, one question is, what are strategies that development organization can take to increase linkages to buyers on the subject of IMTA?
Yes.
Maybe one or two examples.
Yeah. Actually, I am unable to open my video. Okay. So, as a development organization like WorldFish, okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Continue.
Yes. Actually, you know as a development organization can coordinate with the private NGOs and donors, can mobilize resources by combining government support, particularly policy, subsidies, infrastructure, research, and private sector investment. Okay, so that IMTA is the new concept in Bangladesh. Farmers in the coastal areas, mainly southeastern and southwestern Bangladesh, people are habituated with the conventional aquaculture. Okay, actually, truly IMTA practice just started. So people are not aware about that. Even the stakeholder like government, private sectors. So we need to involve in the research, involve the private partnership, NGOs, donors, and the private sector, those who are able to invest in this sector. So this can be the way to improve the IMTA, scaling the IMTA.
Thank you, Ashok. That was quite clear. I can see that there's still people on the call and the conversations are still rolling. So I hope those of you can say we can continue on addressing the questions because it is a very interesting topic. We have one from David Werner Jeffries. He said, very interesting. Food safety is a very important area that we seem to be underinvested as an organization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go on. Mariska, also, if you'd like to join, and Dennis as well. Continue on. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. I think I just as a comment, and I see colleagues have supported this, is that making sure that the aquatic products we're producing are safe to consumers is critical to the mission. It's both, for obvious reasons, making sure people don't get sick, but also key to accessing export markets. And I've been working, what's great about the Bangladesh team, because our team's been supporting this, is the FIQC and others have really great processes in place. But I think there's real opportunity for WorldFish in terms of this kind of South-South collaboration, and there's some project proposals at the moment. I suppose the point is, I think this is an important area. I think it sounds like colleagues are, and how can we develop this kind of capacity institutionally to support, I think, which is a key need. But I'm welcome to hear colleagues these presenters give their views on that. Thank you.
Over to you, Ashok or Mariska or Dennis.
In Bangladesh, the bivalves, mainly green mussel and oyster, is the very prominent component of IMTA system. Okay, that there is a good opportunity to familiarize the people for consumptions, both domestic and even we can. There is an opportunity to export market also. So, because we need the depuration and certification, okay, that we are trying to do this year, and finally we will go for certification. If we can complete the certification process, then we raise our voice to the consumers, end users. So this is the systems, this is the safety, this is the nutritional value, this is the So This is the only one barrier. Still, we don't know that is food is safe or not. Okay. Thank you.
I think the Bangladesh team has, I mean, it's quite, you guys have looked at what are the enabling conditions that need to be in place for us to export these products. And I think that like what you've done in Bangladesh, we should be doing in all of our projects that are similar to this is, okay, we aspire to export, whether it's domestic markets or international markets, we aspire to sell to these buyers, figure out what these buyers need, and make sure that all of the assurances, including food safety, maybe animal welfare is, important for that particular buyer, or other factors within production, and then making that happen. And I think food safety, you're not going to find many buyers that are not interested in food safety. So I totally agree with David that that's definitely an area we should be investing in at WorldFish.
Mariska, as you know, Bangladesh exports shrimp and prawn. Okay, there is a structured export market, and the only Department of Fisheries is the authorized organization to give the certificate. Okay, as per in case of the European market, they have a protocol of food safety. And in case of American market, USA market, they have a FDA rule. Okay, so we already primarily talked with the Department of Fisheries Quality Control Department, and as well as the two processors who export the shrimp and prawn to Europe and US. Okay, the same issues they raised. Say there is a market of green mussel and oyster, but need the certification. So we are trying to do it. As you know, our time is very limited and resource is limited. So within this resource and time, we are trying to get partnership with the BFRI to develop a depuration protocol for bivalves on food safety issues. Okay, and then we'll go for certifications, and we will involve the government, BHTI, and also Department of Fisheries during this process. Okay, thank you.
And with that, I
Yeah,
think
thank you.
really good remarks to sort of end this discussion. Mariska, any last words before I think we can close?
I didn't prepare any last words, except I'm really excited that, people are excited to talk about this, and give me a lot of energy. So I hope the same counts for everyone else. And thanks to Ashoke and Dennis for joining us and sharing all these really rich insights from what we're doing in these country teams. So thank you.
We have a few more questions that we unfortunately are not able to address because of time. But don't worry, we will be sharing the recording and the slides of our speakers in a post-event email. And looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much, Mariska, for leading us, and Dennis and Ashoke for joining us and sharing your expertise. And hope to have more conversations on market systems soon. Thank you very much.
Okay,
With that, I close. Thank you, everyone.